In this video, I'm going to give you an overview of the game book Expeditionary Company by Rick, Saul, and David Velasco. These are two Spanish authors, and it's amazing that we have a game book in English written by non-English speakers. I don't know if they wrote it in Spanish first and it was translated, or if they wrote it in English directly. I know it's pretty exceptional. Again, usually game books in English have been written by English speakers only. I only know the Asterix game books that were written in French and then translated into English. So this is an interesting event. Now, I was mentioning the Expeditionary Company game book, and you're wondering, oh, Marco's actually going to talk about all three volumes, the first three volumes. No, this is the game book. This is one game book just split into three tomes, and you need to jump from one book to the other to be able to play. This is not a video review. I would need to actually play the game book to give you a video review, but it's an overview of the rules of the tutorial adventure and what I kind of got after spending an entire morning with this book. And I pretty much first had the suspicion I don't want to play this, and then the more I looked into the materials, the more I was sure that this is not a game book for me. But maybe you'll still figure out if this is for you from what I have to share. So, Expeditionary Company, it is a travel and business simulator describing the events of this transport company in a dying fantasy world. You are the leader of this company, but the world is dying. There are mysterious mists that are surrounding the few surviving cities, and those mists are full of monsters and horrors. And so, since the world has about 2 years left to live, you're like, oh sure, let's start a business instead of just like, partying all day. So you start your business, and that's pretty much how it works. You will put together a company of people traveling with you. One of them will be the leader of the expedition, and you will pick up contracts of transporting cargo, transporting people, and you will go from place to place to complete these assignments. Again, it's mainly a business and travel simulator. It's very complex, and so to start telling about it, I'll do what Velasco told me to do. We recommend I start from the first book, get a sense of the rules from there, and then move from wherever it made sense. And so that's how I did. So we have a map of the realm here. We have more maps, roads on the map, roads with different kind of terrains that you're expecting to encounter as you go to different destinations. This is extremely important. And so the idea is this: the book, the adventure, the campaign, I should say, is divided into months. Each month you can complete 4 stories, so 4 missions. They may be individual quests, and they may be transport of cargo, transport of people. You will put together, again, a company of guards, so you will select the guards from a pool of available adventurers, each with life points, combat, driving, survival, commission, terrain knowledge, and then specific bonuses. So you also have to remember when they and where they apply. Lisbeth will give you a bonus in speed, and also mountains. When you have to survive there, another person will give you an advantage when dealing with guilds and things like that. You will receive your mission, and then you will travel. And let's start from there, because again, that is the heart of the game. You will have a sheet recording what happens to your caravan. Each day of the trip will be divided into 3 phases: a morning, an afternoon, and a night. Usually you travel morning and afternoon and you rest at night, but you can choose to travel at night also. And you will roll on event tables to determine the weather, how much the horrible mist is affecting you, and things that happen in different places and circumstances. But most importantly, you're going to use the values to determine how far you travel every day. Ultimately, that is your main goal. So, you will start, you will need to take into account the resistance of your wagon. It starts with 10 resistance points, and damage will reduce the resistance of your wagon. So to determine how much you travel in the morning or afternoon, you will travel 10 kilometers plus the result of a die, different for terrain, so D4, D6, D12, modify that by the amount of resistance points that your wagon still has. So if I only have 7 resistance points, I need to multiply that by 0.7. Yes, the book does recommend use a calculator. But then also you have to take into account other factors, because the animals. Because also your animals have life points, and if you lose animals, then there's also that modifiers. Other factors such as climatic conditions may affect your traveling speed, so you also have to take these bonuses and penalties into account. Some of the characters have bonuses or penalties for that. Oh, each character comes from a specific location on the map. They know the area very well, so when you're traveling within 50-kilometer radius from their birthplace, then you also have a bonus. So you take all of these into account, and this is an example of how you calculate your travel segment, how far you travel, say, in the morning. So you have to do this twice per day, 3 times if you decide to travel at night. And the total is 17.6 kilometers. At this point, to simplify everything as much as possible and not to complicate this process, the distance is rounded off. I have a different definition of simplifying everything as much as possible, and this procedure does not meet that distance. Oh, what happens to your passengers and to your cargo? Of course, that determines how much you're gonna get paid. So there's gonna be modifications based on, well, how many of your passengers make it to the end of the trip. So, and you calculate that in terms of life points. So you're gonna use your trusted calculator at the end of the trip to calculate that. The cargoes, of course, how much of your cargo is still there as calculated in material points. Maybe you find more cargo, so you go above the initial 10. You will have a base rate of payment on an estimated journey time. So if you go there faster or slower, that will be affected. So again, your trusty calculator always with you. Then you know what happens if you reach the destination 2 days earlier or 3 days late. Now, people traveling together also want to have a good time, so there is a rating for the rapport between your crew and the members and the people that you're transporting, and also with each other. So various events will increase or decrease the rapport, so you're more likely to get a good tip or not a good tip if people are annoyed with you or if people are happy with you. Again, to simplify everything as much as possible, here is an example of how much money you calculate that you will receive with all of these things in mind. Guards, again, they have your journey value. Guards is I showed you earlier, the different things that they do. And then we have combat. And honestly, I was going through all of these rules and more rules, of course. But I want to get to combat because all of these rules, I was like, wow, they put so much attention and so much detail in traveling every day and things like that. Combat must be super tactical, maybe a separate map. No. Combat is a simplified fighting fantasy. So all of your company members, you put together the combat values into a single value, roll 2 dice, and then the enemy has a single combat value, you roll 2 dice and add their combat value to there. So you compare the 2 modified die rolls, whoever has the highest hits the opponent. Simplify Fighting Fantasy, because at least in Fighting Fantasy you can use things such as luck or different items. It's just incredibly simplistic. If you hit them, you give them damage based on how much damage you can give. If they hit you, you roll on a die to determine which part of your convoy was hit, but wait with modifiers because, for example, wolves would not be interested in attacking the wagons. They don't want to munch on the wooden wheels of your wagons, things like that. But again, so you have all of these layers of difficulty. I was going to say complexity, but difficulty is a better descriptor, I think. But no decisions, no choices. You're rolling dice and you're along for the ride. And that's the general idea. Again, more things about what I already told you. Gold ash is the magic dust that you form a circle with around your camp at night so that the mist doesn't come and kill you. And so that's a resource you have to take into account. Now, this is the general idea. More in detail, the contra ledger. This is actually where you're supposed to start, or is. No, you're supposed to start from here, then here. The point is that there's going to be a table and you roll on and to determine which guild is giving you a contra. Maybe it's the tanners and furries. Maybe it is the blacksmiths and the cauldron makers. And so this book is divided into sections, each with possible interactions with that guild. So if I am completing a contra for the blacksmiths and cauldron makers, I'm going to use this one. The jewelers and the goldsmith, I'm going to do this. These are the section. To give you a sense of how this book of the ledger is structured. So each trip you will only use a section. Say the goldsmith, after I roll and determine randomly that I'm going to work for the goldsmith, I roll to see if I'm transporting nondescript cargo or cargo signed by a famous craftsman, in which case I read an extra section and there are extra rules. So I start here, read, prepare and everything, and then I check to see if this is my first, second, third, or fourth contract. Suppose it's the first. I go to 20 and I read what it says. It sets the scene. It tells me I'm interacting with people who want to give me a job. And so these scenes, well, that's what they do. And it gives you more things to take into account. Now, each trip has 4 goalposts or milestones or kilometer stones, I guess. So you take the total distance that you're traveling, say 134 kilometers, you divide it into 4 segments of equal length. And when you reach the first quarter, so in the kilometers that you cover every day, say we cover the first quarter, then you go and read that episode, that event. When you reach the second, so halfway through, you go like that. So basically each trip has 4 events that will always happen mandatorily in that order in that trip. And many of these, I mean, I haven't read them all, but even after I decided not to actually play the game as written, I started reading a number of them, and many felt very trivial. You take a detour or you don't. Now your speed is increased by 10%. Because ultimately, again, the main game effects have to do with the report and the speed. Or you make a decision, you produce a quickie, a witty comeback with one of the people you are interacting with. Then your report goes up by 10%. More other things to give you a sense of how this works. Oh yes, so as we travel more specifically, so this is the table where you roll for the camp stages. So again, morning and afternoon. Camp stages is at night, the travel stages morning and afternoon. Roll d10 plus modifiers to see what happens, and maybe something happened to my guard. Then I go to 703, and then I'll know I'm traveling with how many guards. Then I roll again, so I'm traveling with 3. and I roll, and tells me who is affected. Then I need to roll to see what is the defect, and so on and so forth. Maybe my animals are affected. Maybe one of the horses is sad. It really is kind of things like that. Again, very small, realistic, detailed things that may happen as you travel, and they will have small impacts about your cargo values, report values, and things like that. And that's kind of the general flow. You go, you set up the scene, and you set up the mission, and you write down the goalposts. Then you travel day by day, and you resolve the events as they happen and do all the math to calculate how far you go each day. I had a very bad feeling when I read about all of these things. I was like, I don't think I want to play this, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is super neat, the logistics are super simple, and the emphasis on the adventure. However, they give you a tutorial. They give a tutorial which pretty much is a sample adventure in which they do the math for you, and they tell you this happens, so you look at that table, this happens, and you look at that table. And it confirmed my feeling. You can pause and read some of these pages so you get a sense that in truth, most of the adventure of the tutorial is about, looking for the missed forecasts, checking where you are, making a roll how far you go, and checking those events, and so on and so forth. And so each day, that's pretty much the things that you do. I'll give you an example of a day of the tutorial adventure, how it would work. Part of how an episode may play out. Despite the tears, despite the race, the caravan continues its journey. Even though Turgle, the deacon, after seeing all that horror, asked it to speed up, so at least you get to eliminate the 20% traveling speed penalty, your expedition still faced to reach its destination. You needed to go 9 kilometers. You advance 10 plus 11 on D12 hills, as Felix gives you an advantage in this terrain. Of course, you remember that, right? You rolled a 6 and an 11, you kept the 11. So it would be 21 kilometers. But you had to multiply them by 0.9, 10% traveling speed penalty due to the white haze on the night, times 0.2 of the life points of the draft animal, times 0.8 of the state of the wagons, 3 kilometers. For the ancient God's sake, that's what I was thinking. 6 kilometers still remaining. I have no interest whatsoever in playing a game that is basically bookkeeping with some references to the theme. And so you play after mission, and there should be an overarching story. I put a mark somewhere. There you go. Because this is actually where you start your adventure, where it says, make sure you're prepared, review all of these rules before you play the mission. And then you get the guarding contracts from the ledger, and so on and so forth. But then we're also told there is a calendar, again, the last years of the world, and so different things will happen depending on when you are. If it's November 16 of the second year of the campaign, then that is unlocked, and so on and so forth. And you know what? I just read these because I wanted to know what happened. And many of these were like, oh gosh, no. Again, they changed the game status, but the state, but not a lot of things. And yes, if you play 2 years of the campaign, then you look at this paragraph here, and you check the keywords that you found, and you find out the end of the campaign. Yeah, I read that also, because, it's a game book. You can just do that. You open up that page and you read it. And let me just say I'm happy, again, they didn't play 2 years of the campaign. But in any case, I'm not likely to play 2 years of the campaign when resolving a single third of a day already included. Punching numbers into the calculator way too much. This is my overview of the rules of the tutorial adventure of Expeditionary Company. If you need more rules, worry not. There's also a fourth volume, a supplement. I just had a look at it. I haven't read, I think, any full sentence. It gave me a good sense or what to expect. I think this game book place the emphasis in the things of game books that are not fun and forgot the ones that are fun. Because to me, bookkeeping may be a means to an end. If then a great adventure emerges, but again, when I'm there with my calculator, I have lost interest already. There may be a phenomenal, epic story behind it, but I'm never gonna experience it. Maybe you give me a summary and I'm like, whoa, that was epic. Because the bookkeeping to get to any kind of significant content is just too intense for me. And again, I read some of the episodes, not the full epic thing. I read some of those episodes and all are still thinly disguised bookkeeping. I wonder why this wasn't designed as a video game. Now that, if you have a program that takes care of all of the math, so kind of like the Oregon Trail really, maybe that would work. Now, I say travel, click, and it tells me what happens, and maybe I make some decisions or not, usually not. It just tells me, oh, this happened, your morale went down. Okay, I just read the story, and the computer is taking care of all the bookkeeping. At the end of the day, it tells me how far I travel. When I reach a certain destination, a window pops up with the character say, hey, I'm from around here, do you want me to drive? And then the program takes care of adding that modifier. But as is, to me, that's not the system of bookkeeping and logistics is not one that I find particularly exciting or interesting in a game book. And if you like it, if you played it and you love it, just let me know, because I'd like you to tell me how exactly you fell in love with this.